Hello everybody, it's Glenn Depke here from Depke Wellness discussing balancing adrenal function. Now, before we get right into this, let me just preface with the recognition that when I mention adrenal function, there's a lot of people who really don't have much of an understanding of what I'm really talking about. So instead of just starting with, oh, let's talk about adrenal function, let's talk about first what you might experience if your adrenals are not functioning properly. So these are the simple questions to really ask yourself as I'm going through this. So your adrenal function will directly relate to challenges with your thyroid, so people are hyper or hypothyroid, challenges with the pancreas and blood sugar, ovaries for women, which may tie into your monthly cycle, symptoms of PMS or menopausal symptoms. We could think about weight loss, because your adrenals play a direct role in the metabolism of fat and protein, as well as your ability to regulate body weight and fat properly. We could talk about really every level of detoxification in your body, general aches and pains in your body. We could discuss how this ties directly into just cellular energy at the most basic level. So if you feel like you're running low on energy all the time, this may tie into your musculoskeletal health, blood sugar imbalances, poor sleep, inability to regulate moods properly, maybe a lack of mental clarity on a regular basis. So instead of really starting with, oh, it's all about adrenals, well, let's understand that what I've just gone through there are typically the symptoms and the challenges that people would live with when their adrenal function is out of balance. So at the beginning here, that gives you a good understanding on really what we're talking about. So what we'll do is we'll spend the rest of the time with a short slideshow discussing a little bit further now about adrenals, since you now understand what the adrenals are going to cause in your body. And now the first aspect to recognize here is just looking at the different stages of adrenal function. And this is represented very well in this chart. And if you look at the chart on the bottom where it goes from normal, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 to failure, the first thing to recognize is adrenal failure is synonymous with death. If there is zero adrenal function, there's zero life. So obviously, since you're listening and watching this, you're not in adrenal failure, of course. Now, the opposite of that, which would be normal or what I would consider optimal functioning adrenals, that's the complete other opposite end of the spectrum. Now, of course, and it might even seem silly that I'm going to say this, but I've obviously worked with zero people in adrenal failure. But we've looked here at Depke Wellness, we've reviewed about 4,600 adrenal test kits. And through the years of all of those test kits that we've seen the results of, while of course nobody is in adrenal failure, and it's silly that I would say, well, of course we don't work with people who are deceased. But on the opposite end, on the bottom left of normal, healthy, balanced, optimal functioning adrenals, while we've seen zero in failure, we've only seen a handful in the normal range. All right, so basically what that tells us is that if you have a health issue, all right, because let's just be real about this, people come into Depke Wellness because they have a health issue. So if there is a health issue, there is about 1/10% chance that you would actually have proper adrenal function. And I don't know about you, but those aren't really good odds, right? So that's why this is so important to look at, because when we're looking at these different stages in the middle of normal and failure, this is where people typically are that come into our office. So recognizing by the graph that you're looking at here, the line that we're using to measure is a measurement of cortisol, which is your body's primary stress response hormone, and the one that's easiest to really recognize and really to measure when we're talking about adrenal function. So if you could look at this graph in stage 1 would basically be an elevated level of cortisol due to stress in your life. But most people think of stress as just really purely mental, emotional, and while that is part of the case, it's not the whole story. Stress beyond mental, emotional is also physical, tied into inflammation, injury, infection, chemical stressors, environmental stressors, and let's add on to this the potential of what we would consider either vibrational or spiritual stressors in your life. So all of these collectively are pushing us to the space where your adrenals your adrenal glands are pumping out huge quantities of cortisol to try to keep up with the stress in your life. Now, as you can see from this graph, notice where the line goes from the solid line to the dashed line. And really that dashed line is a time frame in your life when your body begins to burn out what is known as your HPA axis. So that stands for your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis. And very simply put, the job of that HPA axis is to bring your body down into a deep state of relaxation after you've just gone through a stressful event, situation, or time frame in your life. So obviously that's essential. Because let's just be real, for all of us, we all have stress. You do, I do, and everybody we know has stress in our lives, right? And so what happens and how we can live healthy and happy lives with these really significant amounts of stress on a regular basis is because of that HPA axis. Because how this would be reflected in your life is you would have stress, the HPA axis would create a functional state of balance. You'd have stress, functional balance, stress, functional balance, and it would just continue on this range, right? Now, once the HPA axis begins to burn out, instead of stress, balance, stress, balance, stress, balance in your life, now what your life looks like is just stress, 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 and it's just basically an accumulative factor, which really creates a significant level of depletion in your adrenals as well as your brain function and many other areas of your body. But for the case of this, we're talking, we're really centered on adrenal function here. All right, now as you can see from that peak of stage 1, after the HPA axis begins to burn out, now you can see the cortisol levels start to deplete. All right, so now you're going to go from that stage 1 into what would be recognized as stage 2. Now, as you can tell by the graph, stage 2 would have a normal total cortisol, except in stage 2 you would have particular times of the day, maybe more than one time of the day, where you don't even have enough cortisol production for normal body function. So we're going to talk even a little bit later about what that even means. And then you can see stage 3, which is basically where the bottom falls out on everything. And in stage 3, you have a low total cortisol for the day, plus you're going to have typically multiple levels of low cortisol throughout the entire day, and you're generally going to have challenges with DHEA and many other secondary hormones that you're really dealing with. And what I think is one of the most important factors to recognize here is that with the clients that we work with here at Depke Wellness, you'd think that we'd probably get a lot of stage 1, but honestly, we almost never see people at stage 1, because in stage 1 you still have balance. Because you have balance because you can recognize that you have energy. So the balance isn't a true state of balance, it's a perceived state of balance because you have energy, but the energy is a stimulated energy. It's like drinking coffee or eating sugar all day for energy, and it's basically the stimulation of high cortisol production. So in all sincerity, most people don't seek attention in stage 1. So they don't seek attention until they get into stage 2. And really, based on the clientele that we see, most people that we see are, and it's really pretty close, it's almost a 50-50 split on our new clients that come into Depke Wellness are either in stage 2 or stage 3. So obviously, this is a very important factor to recognize and address. I promise you that I would help you understand the factor and the importance of your adrenal gland function, and that is so evident in this slide right here. In the middle, where you see the circle around the cortisol to DHA ratio, right? That is basically tied directly into your adrenal function. All right, so every circle outside of the middle circle is directly related to your adrenal gland's ability to function properly. So let's just start on the circle on the bottom right, and we're going to work our way around this clockwise. So your adrenals plays a direct role in the function of your pancreas, your thyroid, and for women, their ovaries. So this is for people with blood sugar issues, hypo, or even sometimes hyperthyroid, and women that have challenges with their cycle or PMS symptoms or menopausal symptoms. All right, now the next circle is tied directly into the metabolism of fat and protein, mucosal surface integrity, protein turnover, weight and fat distribution. So the mucosal surface integrity is the first layer of defense of your immune system. Obviously, that would be of a high level of importance. Metabolizing your fat and protein is a huge factor because there's so many people who may actually even eat well, but if you eat well with poor adrenal function, which then in the end would create poor digestive function, if you're not metabolizing the fat and protein properly, this is creating issues as just the simple building blocks of life, essential aspects for neurological function, and just for creating a healthy body. And there's also a lot of people who just really, they could diet and they can exercise and do all the things they think they need to do to control their body weight and fat, yet with poor adrenal function, you actually lose that ability to regulate weight and fat distribution properly. So a lot of times this is gaining weight in the midsection, or especially in the belly, or this is even for some people who have a really unhealthy level of weight loss and can't seem to even gain weight. So let's not forget that factor. Your adrenal function plays a role in every level of detoxification in your body, and specifically the phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification pathways. Just above that, you can see that your adrenals plays a role in immune regulation and also pro and anti-inflammatory states. And this is the one circle that I see with consistency with clients, because so many people get stuck in what I call the trilogy of the adrenal, immune, and inflammatory challenges. And when this is all working properly, the body is in really great harmony. But when this system is out of, just out of balance, it can really create some troubled states in the body and even lead to autoimmune type of reactions and diseases in the body. Let's also add into there that chronic inflammation, which is generally what occurs when people get stuck in these poor adrenal patterns. That chronic inflammation leads to really the regular understanding and of aches and pains in the body that most people are living with. So let's not forget that factor. All right, now just above that, your adrenal function will also play a direct role in glucose homeostasis, so this is blood sugar balance, and in cellular energy. Really, in all sincerity, this is energy at the most basic level, and nowadays, who doesn't want more energy, right? This is something that it seems like the holy grail that everybody's trying to reach for, but nobody's really quite achieving. All right, to the right of that is your musculoskeletal health, so this is bone and connective tissue turnover, as well as muscular integrity. So this is another big impact that is directly affected by your adrenal function. And then this last circle here, which is your neural tissue health, which ties directly into your quality of sleep and mood, your memory and learning, and your overall neural connectivity. And this is another big issue for a lot of clients that we see. They just don't have really good healthy sleep patterns. Recognizing a healthy sleep pattern is easily falling to sleep, sleeping well through the night and through the morning, and then waking up around the time the sun comes up, and honestly, waking up and like you're rocked and ready to roll, like you just can't wait to jump out of bed. That's a quality sleep pattern. There's a lot of people with poor adrenal function that just can't regulate their mood properly. There's a lot of people with poor adrenal function that just have lost what they would consider their mental clarity. So I just want you to see and understand that when your adrenal glands are out of balance, everything on the sheet is potentially out of balance. And if you ask yourself the simple question, what do your adrenals tie into? The answer to that is very simple. Everything, right? And so if you're missing the adrenal tie, you could be missing the key factor as to why you can't get well, why you can't find your balance, and why you can't escape whatever potential health issue or symptom or disease state you're actually dealing with currently. All right, so to understand this a little bit deeper, I think it's important to at least have a basic understanding what's going on hormonally in your adrenal glands. Now this slide may look technical, but we're going to make it easy. All right, and if we look at the upper right hand portion of this slide where it says B5, so that basically is vitamin B5. And what your body does is it converts vitamin B5 to a coenzyme that is referred to as acetyl-CoA. Now your body uses that acetyl-CoA and your own body's production of cholesterol as the two raw materials needed to produce your very first baseline hormone in your adrenals, which is called pregnenolone. Now this pregnenolone you can look at and refer as to the mother hormone from which every other hormone is going to be produced. All right, so when we look at this, you can recognize two different pathways. Now, the one pathway goes straight down, and I call this pathway the general health and happiness pathway, because we need these hormones to be generally healthy and happy. Makes sense, right? Yeah, so the pregnenolone pulls down through a hydroxy form into DHEA. From DHEA, we produce other end result hormones such as different forms of testosterone, andro, and different estrogen type hormones. Yeah, so these are essential for male and female individuals. It's just going to be these different hormones are going to be produced in a variety of different levels based on gender, age, and also function of the body. But this pathway is so essential for you to be healthy and happy. So just remember that part. Now, the other pathway where you see the red arrows being pulled over, this is what's referred to as the pregnenolone steal, and this is a part of what we would look at as the fight or flee pathway. Right, I wanted just to be up front, I want you to also recognize this pathway does play a role in general health and happiness also. But I always refer to this as the fight or flee pathway because when you have high amounts of stress, your pregnenolone is going to pull down this pathway because of that stress. So you go from pregnenolone to progesterone, you're going to go through a couple of hydroxy forms, you're going to drop down into cortisol, which remember earlier I said this is your primary stress response hormone, and then cortisone, which is your body's natural anti-inflammatory. So if you're dealing with mental emotional stress, you're going to need the high production of cortisol. And if you're dealing with the physical stressors that are leading into inflammation, which could be injury, infection, chemical or environmental stressors, and more, that inflammatory response in your body is going to require a high production of cortisone, which is a conversion from cortisol. So what happens is all this pregnenolone is being pulled down this pathway because this is more of a fight or flee. So if you think about this, and maybe even ask yourself this question, if your body has to make a choice between what it perceives as saving your life or keeping you in a general state of health and happiness, which do you think it's going to pick? Right? And of course, it's going to pick to save your life. So what's going to happen is your adrenal function and your bodily function overall is going to choose the pathway down the progesterone, eventually into cortisol and cortisone, because it's going to be important to save your life, whether you're in a true life or death situation or just perceived by your body, which then in turn leaves a deficiency down the DHEA pathway, which then creates deficiencies in these other secondary and end result hormones, which ultimately leaves you unhealthy and unhappy. So that's why this is so important to get into balance and to recognize and just to understand, that as long as you're not in failure, which you're not, because you're listening and watching. Remember, adrenal failure is synonymous with death, so you're not there. But whether you're somebody who is in a stage 2 or a stage 3, it doesn't matter where you're at. You can always balance. You can always reset that HPA axis, and you can always get your adrenals back into full function. But the key is to test this, to know where you're at, and to get on a proper protocol to not only balance your adrenals, to assist your body in that balance, and also assist your body in the ability to reset that very important HPA axis, that hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, so you functionally can regain that ability to drop into the deeper state of relaxation to actually balance and heal from the stress in your life. So this is such an important factor and such an important focus in your overall health and happiness. So just with this information, I'm gonna give you something of great value for you today, because you might be listening and watching this and thinking, well, I don't really know what's going on with my adrenals. So what we have here is just go to our website at depkewellness.com, and on the upper heading, the upper right hand corner of the heading, you're going to see a link that you can click on to get a complimentary adrenal assessment that you can do on your own, to at least give you a generalized idea on where you're at from an adrenal health standpoint. Because honestly, knowledge is power, understanding is power, and then once you have the knowledge and the understanding, then you can move forward into something, again, to assist your body in healing, balancing, and recovering from adrenal insufficiency and a burnt out HPA axis. Yeah, so thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this video. I am Glenn Depke from Depke Wellness, helping people feel better. I thank you.